The haunted radio in the shadowy recesses of an unassuming antique shop, where forgotten relics whispered tales of the past, there sat a peculiar radio. Its design was archaic, almost alien, numbers etched across the top, letters carved along the bottom, and an unsettlingly pristine finish, as though time had refused to touch it. It had been many things to many people, a source of melody, a voice in the dark, and for some, their final companion. What no one knew was that this unremarkable artifact had been a bridge to something far more sinister. Decades earlier, it belonged to an old mechanic named Walter Grayson. Grief-stricken after the sudden death of his beloved wife, Walter grew desperate to reconnect with her. He sought answers in forbidden books and whispered secrets passed from trembling tongues. One fateful night, he constructed the radio a grotesque fusion of technology and the occult. But instead of his wife, he channeled something far darker, far hungrier. Flashback. Walter sits in his dimly lit workshop, muttering incantations as he tunes the radio. Shadows writhe along the walls, and an unnatural growl emanates from the device. Walter's experiments ended tragically. The voices he conjured drove him mad, his mind unraveling like a threadbare cloth. As his life ebbed away, he gave the radio to a trusted priest, Father McAllister, begging him to keep it hidden, far from curious hands. But fate, or something else, had other plans. Flashback fades to Father McAllister locking the radio in a dusty storage unit. The camera lingers on his worried expression before cutting to the eerie hum of the radio in the darkness. Years later, the priest passed away, his belongings sold at auction to a thrifty antique dealer. The radio sat quietly in his shop for months, waiting, watching, until one day a young woman named Claire entered, her eyes inexplicably drawn to it. Scene. Claire picks up the radio, brushing her fingers over its smooth surface. A faint, familiar melody begins to play. The song. It was the same lullaby her father used to sing before his tragic death. Claire couldn't resist taking it home, convinced it was a sign, a connection to him. It began subtly at first, a whisper of static that sounded almost like words. Then came the visions. She saw fleeting images of her father, his face twisted in agony, reliving his final moments. Each night, the radio's voice grew louder, more coherent, calling her by name. Montage. Claire's sleepless nights, her frantic research into the radio's origins, and the chilling discovery of Walter Grayson's story. Claire uncovered the radio's grim history, the deaths, the madness, and its true purpose, a Ouija board disguised as a harmless relic. Walter had unknowingly created a conduit for something ancient and malevolent. As Claire delved deeper, the spirits surrounding her grew bolder. Among the voices, one rose above the rest, Walter himself, warning her of the demon bound within the radio, desperate to escape. Its influence had claimed countless lives, each one feeding its growing power. Together, they prepared to confront the darkness. The exorcism was a brutal clash of wills. The radio spewed unholy chants, the room quaking with unnatural force. Visions of her father's death taunted Claire, weakening her resolve. Each strike unleashes ghostly wails, the demon's form briefly flickering into view. In the end, it was Claire's love for her father that gave her strength. With a final shattering blow, the radio was destroyed, the demon banished, for now. Scene fades to Claire sitting in her apartment, staring at the remnants of the radio. A faint whisper lingers in the air before silence, but such darkness is never truly defeated. The pieces of the radio lie scattered, waiting for another curious soul to gather them. And when they do, the cycle will begin anew. Tagline: some connections should never be made.